Hello there, little ones. I'm sure you know that the 10th question of the physics essay is a part A or B type question, where the part A is from the lesson thermodynamics and the part B is from the lesson matter and radiation. So you can either tackle A or B, and either of these will count as a full question, but you can't do both. This video is one of two videos that will be covering two subsections that are guaranteed to be included in the 2020 exam. And just for the record, these are blackbody radiation and nuclear energy. So let's move on to the actual content.
If mathematics is the language of the universe, then physics is the grand story of existence written in this language.
Matter and radiation. Black body radiation.
Now, we need to talk a little bit about electromagnetic waves. An electromagnetic wave is a wave composed of perpendicularly oscillating electric and magnetic fields that propagates perpendicular to the direction of oscillation. Now, an electromagnetic wave doesn't require a medium to move in, and if it does enter a medium, then the velocity of the EM wave will reduce from its usual 300 million meters per second. We also need to remember that the wave equation is applicable to EM waves, and this means that since the velocity is fixed in a given medium, the frequency is actually inversely proportional to the wavelength. And so when you increase the frequency and decrease the wavelength, you get a whole range of electromagnetic waves, which is also called the electromagnetic spectrum. So assuming that you know that an electromagnetic wave is actually a photon, the energy of the photon is dependent on the frequency, and so as the frequency increases, the energy also increases, and the EM waves transition from radio waves that bring your mom her favorite teledramas to microwaves that reheat your leftovers. And then they become the infrared waves of your TV remote that are blocked every time you're trying to change the damn channel. And finally, we arrive at visible light that allows you to watch this wonderful video. Speaking of which,
if you liked this video, please like and subscribe.
only if you actually want to. No pressure. Now let's just quickly go through the remaining three. Next off, we come to UV rays, which are responsible for both giving you vitamin D and skin cancer. We kind of have a love-hate relationship with the sun. Then you have the X-rays, which are used at low intensities to look inside soft materials. And finally, we come to gamma rays, which are responsible for turning Bruce Banner into the Hulk. But it doesn't really work that way in real life, so I suggest not trying that at home. Now, finally, the time has come to talk about black bodies. So, a black body is an ideal object that can absorb all of the radiation that falls on its surface. Now, the reason you call a black body is because the color black has this special ability to absorb a lot of radiation. But there's another side to this. A black body can usually emit the maximum possible amount of radiation that it's allowed to emit based on its surface temperature. The exact limit to how much radiation it can emit is given by a certain equation that I will discuss soon, so please be patient. Anyway, one of the implications of this is that if you wear black clothes outside when it's very sunny, then you're going to heat up really fast. You're also going to cool down fast, but not fast enough to counter the heating effect of solar radiation, because the sun is very hot. Almost as hot as me, actually. So now let's discuss an example based on one of the MCQ questions on this topic. Imagine that you have two mugs, a white mug and a black mug, and you fill them both with iced tea and leave them out on your desk. Now, which of these do you think will reach room temperature faster? That means actually heat up faster. Well, if you neglect conduction and convection and base this solely on radiation, assuming there's no sunlight falling on the two mugs, then because of the color black, the black mug will heat up faster as it absorbs more radiation. So in the race to room temperature, the black mug will leave the white mug in the dust. Now, what if you were to fill the two mugs with boiling hot tea? You know the way old people enjoy tea? Even though it burns your tongue off? Well, now that the temperature of the mugs is higher, the black mug will have the opportunity to emit far more radiation than it absorbs because of the temperature difference between the environment and the mug. And I think I forgot to mention, but white objects are very poor absorbers and emitters of radiation. So the white mug will again be left in the dust as its rate of emission is very low compared to the black mug. So to recap, not every black object is a black body, because a black body is an ideal object that can absorb all the radiation incident on it and emit the maximum amount of radiation allowed. But that being said, black and other dark colors make an object more like a black body, and white and light colors make an object less like a black body. On that note, shiny surfaces also emit and absorb less, and rough surfaces emit and absorb more. So a black rough object is very close to being a black body, and a shiny white object is very far from being a black body. Whew, finally we can move on to the good stuff. So we are going to start with Wien's law. But before we get to the actual law, we need to understand something. A body at any temperature will emit every single type of radiation there is on the spectrum. By this I mean that even you, a body at 37 degrees Celsius, is right now emitting every single type of radiation from microwaves to gamma rays. So if you are exposing yourself to gamma radiation, why aren't you turning into the Hulk? Well, little one, the answer to that is that you're only emitting a very small amount of gamma radiation. You see, depending on its surface temperature, a body has a certain wavelength at which it emits a lot of radiation, and then at all the other wavelengths it emits a reduced amount of radiation. In other words, at a certain point the amount of radiation peaks, and at other wavelengths it falls off. Now this wavelength at which the radiation peaks is called the wavelength of maximum intensity radiation and is denoted by lambda max. While we are here, I think we should note that the area under this graph is the total intensity of radiation emitted by the black body. That's because the area under the graph is the sum of all the intensities belonging to each wavelength. Wien's law essentially provides the relationship between lambda max and the surface temperature of the body in Kelvin. Now, as you can see, when the temperature increases, lambda max decreases and the intensity distribution graph changes. At higher temperatures, the graph becomes more narrow, which means that most of the intensity is focused around lambda max. And now we come to Stefan's law. So you see, a black body emits radiation energy over time. We want to relate this energy to the surface temperature of the body, just like we related lambda max. To do this, we first make the energy independent of time and the nature of the body. So first we define the power released by the object, which is energy divided by time. Then we define the intensity of radiation as the power per unit area of the black body. So this is basically the energy released by 1 square meter of the black body per second. which is obviously independent of the size of the black body and the duration of radiation. Experimentally, it has been found that the intensity of radiation depends on the fourth power of the surface temperature in Kelvin. And the proportionality constant of this relationship is the only factor that we didn't consider, and that is the surface nature of the black body. This is given by the Stefan's constant. Now, the two of these are officially called the Stefan-Boltzmann law and the Stefan-Boltzmann constant, but people usually leave poor Boltzmann out of the name. Okay, so I assume that you understand that there are no actual black bodies in the real world, because a black body is an ideal concept, and most objects in the real world can be referred to as grey bodies. That is, they are bodies that can emit a certain fraction of the radiation that a black body would emit. So for real world bodies, we can modify the Stefan's law by adding a factor that represents the similarity between a normal body and a black body. We call this factor the emissivity of the surface. We will define the emissivity as the ratio between the intensity of radiation emitted by a normal body and the intensity of radiation emitted by a black body at the same temperature, which gives us this equation. So as an example, imagine that there are two bodies, a normal grey body and a black body, both at a temperature of 204.9 Kelvin. This means that the black body will have an intensity of 100 watts per meter square. But if the emissivity of the grey body is 0.6, then the intensity of radiation emitted by the grey body will be 0.6 times the radiation intensity of the black body, which is 60 watts per meter square. Well, the good news is we are actually done with all the theory. But we still have to discuss a rather important application of black body radiation for you to be able to do questions properly. And so we begin our discussion of the sun. Did you know that the sun actually releases energy as black body radiation? You see, objects at room temperature mainly emit radiation in the infrared range. That's why you can see objects at room temperature very clearly through a heat vision camera or an infrared camera. When the surface temperature of something increases from room temperature, the wavelength of maximum intensity will shift from the infrared region to the visible light region. This is why when you heat up a piece of metal, it slowly starts to glow, starting from a very dull red to orange to a very bright yellow, which is so intense that it's almost white. We actually use this concept to light up our homes. Or rather, we used to. Remember those old yellowish bulbs with a kind of coil or wire at the center? That is actually called a filament bulb because there is a filament at the center of the bulb, which is usually made of tungsten for its high melting point. A current passing through this wire dissipates enough heat to heat the wire up to about 2500 degrees Celsius or 2800 degrees Kelvin. At this point, the filament starts to radiate an enormous amount of radiation. But unfortunately, the lambda max or the wavelength of maximum intensity radiation still lies within the infrared region. Because of this, even though the filament bulb emits a lot of visible light, it emits an even larger amount of heat. That's why filament bulbs are very inefficient compared to other light sources like LEDs. And when you turn the filament bulb on, you can actually feel the temperature in the room rising due to the heat released. Now the sun is actually on a different level compared to a filament bulb because the surface temperature of the sun is more than double that of a filament bulb. Because of this, the sun mostly radiates visible light, but it also radiates a lot of both infrared and ultraviolet. So you're a researcher on the earth and you want to find out the exact temperature of the sun. How do you go about doing that? Well, it's quite simple really. So what we need is 1. the radius of the sun, and 2. the distance from the sun to the earth. Now these things can be found out using basic trigonometry and watching the alignment of the planets with respect to the sun, which is actually a lesson in astronomy that you don't really need to know. But anyway, if we go back to the equations, you will see that we can actually find the temperature of the sun using Stefan's law. But for that, we will need to find out the intensity of radiation on the surface of the sun. Unfortunately, the only intensity we can really measure is the intensity of solar radiation falling on the earth. But fear not, little ones, for this is more than enough. For you see, we are going to draw an imaginary sphere around the sun that passes through the earth. The radius of this sphere will obviously be the distance from the earth to the sun, and the intensity of solar radiation passing through this sphere will be the intensity of solar radiation on the surface of the earth. So how exactly does this imaginary sphere help us find the intensity of solar radiation on the surface of the sun? It's actually more or less the law of conservation of energy at work. For you see, if there are no losses on the way, then all of the solar radiation that leaves the sun must pass through this imaginary sphere, which means that the power P emitted by the sun is the same power P passing through the imaginary sphere. So if we write an equation for this power in terms of the surface intensity and the surface area, so we can equate the power from the sun to the power through this imaginary sphere, which I will call IS. This allows us to subject I sun, which is the solar radiation intensity on the surface of the sun, and then start substituting values. Just remember that the solar radiation intensity on the imaginary sphere is the same as that on the earth, because earth lies on this sphere. I earth is actually called the solar constant, and its value is about 1400 watts per meter squared. So A sun is the surface area of the sun, and AIS is the surface area of the imaginary sphere. So we write the equation for the surface area of a sphere, and when substituting the radius, remember to convert into meters. And we actually need the surface temperature of the sun and not I sun itself. So we won't find the exact answer, we'll just simplify it a bit, and then we will substitute it into Stefan's law. So we write Stefan's law, we subject the temperature, and then we substitute the values. I simplified I sun a little bit. I squared the 15 and the 7, and I've written the 100 squared as 10 to the power 4, and then we take out our logbook. So find the log values of each term in the numerator and add them together. Here I've simplified the powers of 10 and added it to the numerator section, because 10 to the power minus 8 in the denominator becomes 10 to the power 8 in the numerator and is added to 10 to the power 4 to produce 10 to the power 12, which has a log value of 12. So then you add up the log values of the denominator and you subtract the two values to get the log value, of the division. But we are not done yet, because the whole thing is affected by the power of 1/4, and to account for this we divide the log value by 4 and then we find the antilog. So this is the temperature of the sun. And now we can use Wien's law to compute the wavelength corresponding to the maximum intensity. If you used your logbook correctly, you would get 500 nanometers as this wavelength, and this is actually in the middle of the visible light range and it corresponds to the color green. But because of the way our eyes work, we can't exactly see the color green in solar radiation, and instead we see the entire spectrum, which is why it looks white to us. So that concludes this video, and I suggest that you solve the 2014, the 2009 and the 2004 past paper questions which are based on this topic, and possibly some MCQ questions as well. And again, I will cover the nuclear energy part as well, so remember to subscribe so that you don't miss it. Good luck and have a nice day.